CBSE Board, Class 11, History, Chapter 2, Part 14, Audio by Renee Matthew. What was so special about the reign of Emperor Justinian? He recaptured Africa from the Vandals, that was a tribic group, and his recovery of Italy from the Ostrogoths. Now these tribal groups shouldn't be underestimated because they had different strategies and methods of conquering even a huge empire as Roman Empire. So, he recaptured Africa. You should remember that Africa and Italy were under the Romans even before Justinian came, from the time of Constantine, from the time of Augustus. So, he recaptured Africa from the Vandals, Italy from the Ostrogoths, which left the country devastated, and it paved the way for the Lombard invasion. So because of the recapturing also, there was a lot of uprisal, there was a lot of confusion within the empire, strain was there, internal strife began to take place, and that paved the way for the Lombard invasion. Who were the Lombards? It was one of the Germanic tribes. So it gave way to the Lombard invasion. By the 7th century, something else happened. There was war between Rome and Iran. It just flared up. Do you remember that there was a great amount of enmity between the two empires? Those were the only two empires in the world which had so much of rivalry and which were really powerful and wealthy. So now, when Rome was devastated, when there was internal strife, it was very easy for Iranians to challenge Romans. And the Sasanians, which ruled Iran since the 3rd century, you remember the Sasanians, and also there were other groups. So Sasanians were ruling the empire, and we saw that one advantage of Rome over the Iranians is that they were just one ruling power, one ruling government was there in Rome. So it was very easy to organize and kind of give the capacity to each segment in the empire instead of consulting so many people. But that was not the case in Iran, where they had two ruling parties. So Sasanians were very powerful. They were ruling the Iranians since the 3rd century. They launched a wholesale invasion, especially on the eastern province. Eastern province was very powerful. In spite of that, they launched a wholesale invasion. Now, Byzantium was the Roman Empire in the eastern part. Okay, and they were very powerful. This is the Byzantium. Covered their provinces in the 620s. And it was just a few years away, literally, from the major blow which came this time from the southeast. So, Byzantium Roman Empire was very powerful. They were able to recover their provinces, all the provinces which they lost to the Sasanians. But before the major blow which came from the Iranians, it was very difficult for them to withstand it because of the power from the Iranians. They recovered the provinces, but then again they had to face a major blow. And that was in 620s where they tried to recover these provinces, but after that again the major blow came. So these were the Byzantium people. This is how they dressed. And this is the map which shows the location, how it is divided, how the sea is surrounding it, and all those factors. The map is very important. Now, a very important segment of this chapter is the expansion of Islam. Expansion of Islam from the beginnings in Arabia. It started its saga, it started its launch from the Arabian part of the world. It is called the greatest political revolution ever to have occurred in the history of the ancient world. So Christianity was there, but before that, expansion along side by side, simultaneously expansion of Islam was also happening, which led to a major revolution. So by 642, that is 10 years after Prophet Muhammad's death, the major prophet, the messenger of God is Prophet Muhammad, according to the believers in Islam, large parts of the Eastern Roman and the Sasanian Empire had fallen to the Arabs. So all these people, they fell to the Arabs because of the power of the Iranians in a series of stunning confrontations. So 10 years after the death of this prophet, it happened that they had to give away these places to the Sasanian Empire, especially the eastern part. So that is why it is termed as the major blow. Now we should also remember that these conquests, which eventually extended as far as Spain, Sindh and Central Asia, showed or led to the subjection of Arab tribes. Okay, Arab tribes were getting influenced. And they also started surrendering when the Islamic State started expanding. So first it was within Arabia, and then it went to the Syrian desert, those parts, and on the fringes of Iraq. So this is how the expansion took place. Okay, so from the Arabian part, then it spread as far as Spain, Sindh and Central Asia, and then the Arab tribes also, they were moving from one place to another. They began in fact with the subjection of the Arab tribes, where they also were converted by the emerging Islamic State. So first from Arabia to the Syrian desert and then to the fringes of Iraq. That is how it started spreading. It was very easy to get control or take control of the Arabian tribes. The Central Islamic lands. That is part 4 or the theme 4 of this particular chapter. So as we enter 21st century, now we can see that there are over 1 billion Muslims living in all parts of the world. It has expanded at a rapid pace. Now citizens of different nations speak different languages and they dress differently, but their common belief is Islam. The process by which the Muslims varied from one place to other, that is how the circumstances also changed. Like now you can see that the Muslims in the Middle East is totally different from what we have in India or in other parts of the world. The culture is different. So the culture actually influenced the belief, or we can say how it spread. But of course their belief, that is a strong faith, was just one. That was just one, and there was no variation in that. But there was a lot of variety in their culture. So the processes by which they became Muslims were varied, and so were the circumstances in which they went their separate ways. So the way they became, the path they took is different. So Islamic community has got its root in a unified past. They were all unified because of one particular factor. And that happened 1400 years ago in the Arabian Peninsula. So that is when this took place. So everything began from the Arabian part of the world, especially the Arabian Peninsula. And that is the unified factor of this particular religion. Now we are going to deal with the rise of Islam in this particular segment of the chapter, and also its expansion of a vast territory, and that extended from Egypt to Afghanistan. So that was the core area of Islamic civilization from 600 to 1200. So rise of Islam started from the Arabian parts of the world, and then it expanded to Spain, Sindh and Central Asia, and now it is getting extended from Egypt to Afghanistan, and that was the core Islamic civilization from 600 to 1200, and all these things happened 1400 years back. So Islamic society exhibited, it was a kind of exhibition that they always had. It had a great variation in the way they exhibited their belief. It led to multiple political and cultural patterns, very interesting political and cultural patterns. So everybody, all the Muslims in the world did not follow the same culture. They had variation, they had diversity. Now, understanding of the history of the Central Islamic lands between 600 to 1200. So how did the archaeologists get to know of all these things? So this period is very important in the study of expansion of Islam. So what were the Central Islamic lands? That was the places from Egypt to Afghanistan. Okay, so this was the particular place when you look at the map, and it was based on 4 factors. What talks about these Islamic lands from 600 to 1200? The 4 factors are, or the 4 resources, which was excavated by the archaeologists. The first one was known as the Chronicles or Tawarik. This is a picture of Tawarik, and that narrate events in order of time. It has got a chronological sequence of what happens in history. Chronicles. Chronicles are very important in history, in world history, or any branch of study. So this is something which narrates the sequential order of what happened, the events, just like a story. The next factor is semi-historical works, which is known as the biography. So one major biography is the Wisdom of Sirah. Sirah was a great thinker and a prophet. So biographies were written in those days. Then the next one was the records of the sayings and doings of the prophet. And that record is known as Hadith. That is what is given here. So all the sayings and doings of the prophet is recorded here, and it has come down from the archaeological sites from the Arabian part of the world. And the last one is the commentaries on the Holy Quran, that is tafsir. So everything is there. So all these four resources gives a lot of wisdom and insight into the expansion of Islam. Now the material from which these works were produced was a large collection of eyewitness. Lot of people were engaged when they wrote this. Like, it's not just the scribes who get involved in these kind of writings. The eyewitness, the people who witnessed everything. So all these reports were known as Akbar. And that was transmitted over a period of time, either orally or on paper. So people will see, they will start writing about it because no other form of entertainment was there. They will write, they will pass on from one particular generation to another generation, and it has come all the way down to the modern world. So these reports were known as Akbar. The authenticity, that is the reliability of each report, that is Khabar, that is known as the authenticity. The reports were known as Akbar, but the authenticity was known as the Khabar. Some of it was valid, some were not. So that was tested by a critical method. And this critical method traced the chain of transmission. That is how it took place, who narrated it, how the sources were transmitted or transferred from one person to another. Because when it is transmitted orally, some of the parts can get lost, some of it can be built up. Okay, all these things happen even now in the present world. So they check the authenticity of all these reports through a chain of transmission, and that is known as isnad. So they will check with the people who transmitted it, whether they were resource people, whether the people were scribes, and all these things are checked. And some of the reports are not correct. So those which are authentic has been kept in the museums, and that is what is getting transmitted over the years. And that also established the reliability of the narrator. So the narrator was also a very important person, playing a key role in the transmission of all these documents. Now this method was not foolproof. Okay, we cannot say that everything can be believed or it is authentic. Medieval Muslim writers were very careful in selecting their information, and also their understanding was of a broader range. And the motives, each thing had an objective. They had a motive when they transmitted things from one place to another, especially of their informants, how they informed things, how they transmitted things from one place to another. So they were very careful in selection of the information than were their contemporaries in other parts of the world. So everybody selected, the selection process was done very carefully. They sieved the matter, and that is how it has come all the way to us. There were a lot of controversial issues, and that produced different versions of the same event. Like suppose they are talking about the sayings of Prophet Muhammad, there will be different versions of the same thing. So they will check again, they will recheck again, they will cross-check again, as it was found in their sources. So finally what the historians will do, finally what these people will do, they will leave the task of judgment to their readers. Because when you read so many references, you will understand which is truth. The commonality will be there. There will be a thread of commonality in all these resources. So readers will refer. That is why when people do research, they are asked to refer so many things about one particular topic. So historians wrote the same event in different parts of the world. But who knows whether it is correct? They will all have one particular common point, and that is something which is the truth. The description of these events were made in the records, and it was very closer to their own times. Okay, they used to describe each part of the event, and that was done very systematically. It was analyzed, and it was like a collection, that is akhbar, reports. So systematically, understanding was there, analysis was done, and then descriptions were made. And most of these chronicles or the semi-historical works, both of them were in Arabic. The best chronicle being Tariq of Tabari. That is also translated into English in 38 volumes. This is Tariq of Tabari, which is translated into English in 38 volumes. The best is that. Now about the documents and the chronicles, the documentaries that were produced, the chronicles, because it gives us a sequence of events I told you in the earlier 4 points. Do you remember that? These are the resources. The first one is chronicles, semi-historical work, and then comes the other two. So these two were written in Arabic. So we can say that this had to be checked. They had to recheck again and again. They had to check if it is correct, if it was done in the right way, and all that. So documentaries and chronicles, these two things paved the way for the authenticity of how Islam got expanded in different parts of the